Here's a question I get a lot from listeners. Why do you take it easy on your guests? Now, this actually kind of came up recently with our interview with Gene Epstein, where he was talking about the reality that I've had a lot of Doug Casey types, Harry Dent types on the program that have a consistent multi-decade long approach to doom and gloom, saying that we're just around the corner for the biggest Great Recession or Great Depression that the world has ever seen. And I'm definitely sympathetic to that. If you haven't yet heard that podcast, go back and listen to it. It's interesting because I kind of addressed this point there, but I wanted to discuss it in more detail here because it's something that does come up all the time. And it's not because I don't have opinions about these things, as you probably know. It's for other reasons. So first of all, let me say this. I have guests on the show a lot that I think are interesting, that I may agree with them on one particular topic, but not other topics. And I don't want the show all to be about me. Okay? I've got the Monday Minutes. I can say whatever I want during those, and it's not going to cost us any time or cost us a great conversation with a great guest. But I don't want the show just to be about me and my thoughts. And so if it was the case that every guest I had on, I was just trying to insert my narrative over and over and over again, it would be really, really boring. So I want to have interesting conversations with people that I respect and allow myself to talk to people that I don't agree with on every single topic. And by the way, that's everyone. Because even the people that I see eye to eye to most in this world, there's probably topics that I desperately don't agree with them. And by the way, I know for a fact, same thing with you. You're listening to this show. There's probably been things I've said that have made you cringe. And there's probably been things that guests have said that have made you cringe, but you keep coming back for more. And I much appreciate it. And actually, that's a great segue to another Monday Minutes that I'm going to do about how to get away with saying offensive stuff, which I think a lot of listeners of this program need to learn about. So that's the first thing. I don't want the show just to be about me. The second thing is I want people to have a good experience coming on the show because I want them to come back because I think they're interesting. The third thing is that counter to how it may seem on the program, I'm actually very much inclined to be quite divisive in conversations, probably to a fault. And I'll tell you why. It is a strength of mine to debate. And when you debate, the goal is not to change the person's mind that you're talking to. The goal is to typically change the minds of those who are listening that are on the margin. And so sometimes in pursuit of that, the person you're talking to digs their heels in, and that's fine. But through debate, through somewhat divisive debate, you can actually figure out where two people stand. And I understand that sometimes that's why you may want me to push the guests on certain topics, and I think I'll probably continue to do a more aggressive job as I want to. But I don't want to drive the conversation into the ground because it doesn't feel super good, unless the people know that's what they're getting into. So that's what's really important. If someone knows they're getting into a debate and I have them on the show because I disagree with something that they said and I want to make it clear that we're getting into debate, that's perfectly reasonable. Now, it's never happened on this show that I've said that I want to debate you on this topic, and here's why. I have debated many people on other topics, on other shows. I'm not going to give the topics and names, but know that it's true. People I respect, libertarian thought leaders and the like. And really the hack there is that there is no hack. You have to be very well prepared. So I don't really have the time to be a full-time real estate entrepreneur and managing principal of ASIM Capital and prepare for a debate about topics, even though they're topics that I'm super passionate about. I'll give you an example. There was recently a guest on this program that is a consultant for the IMF, and I have a lot of respect for him in terms of tracking data on a monthly basis. And he said something that triggered me a little bit. We kind of had a back and forth. But that moment was created because he knows where I stand on these topics. It's the third time that he's been a guest on the program. He knows that I'm sympathetic to or am a proponent of the Austrian School of Economics. And he made a couple comments about war creating economic booms, and specifically about how World War II basically ended the Great Depression and brought on this massive amount of economic prosperity. And from my perspective, this theory has been debunked so thoroughly, not in mainstream media, not in high school, but in reality, as in, if you put forth a thought leader who is a proponent that is bullcrap and take a 1 hour time to listen to his perspective and then 1 hour to listen to the other person's perspective about how World War II creates economic booms, most people are not going to think that World War II created economic booms if you viewed them with the same data or took an hour each. But the reality is we're getting that hammered into our brains at such a young age that that's what most people accept. I'll give you a quick example. Simply sending young men to die who are working productive jobs, that doesn't sound like a very good way to be productive. Second of all, building equipment and taking it out into the ocean to be blown up is not productive. Taking a bunch of the most productive members of society and saying, we're shipping you overseas to die and to come home with post-traumatic stress disorder and to half of your limbs get blown off and all this stuff. That is not the makings of an economic boom. Regardless of that, I put forth a couple of those little, cute little arguments, and that was it. But it didn't derail the whole conversation, which is the last and most likely important point, which is that I'm trying to do a lot of things when I'm conducting an interview, one of which is not derail the conversation so that we can get as much out of it as possible for what I think the audience needs the most. So that's on my mind constantly. So if someone says in pursuit of something that I agree with, some little offshoot that is just I can't ignore because it makes my skin crawl, I do everything I can not to address that point and to keep us on track and to focus on what I agree with them with so that we don't go down this endless rabbit hole. And if you're interested in hearing what it's like to do this, listen up. There's a podcast episode that hasn't been released yet, that's going to be released soon, that the guest says, I think probably the second cringiest thing to me that I've heard on the show other than war creates economic booms. War creates economic booms is probably like my lifelong economic trigger point. But this other one, I'll give you a clue. The term free roll is used. So in a future episode, if you hear the term free roll, know that it took every inch of my sanity not to redirect the conversation. So hopefully that clears that up. And yes, I will continue to press people on topics that I think are worth pressing so we can get the best out of the program. But at the same time, just remember that I'm not trying to assault them into a debate without letting them know it's a debate. And my goal, as always, is to give you as much value as possible. I think a lot of people that listen to this show generally agree with me. In fact, some of the more radical things that I've said on the show, sometimes I get a bunch of emails from people saying, yeah, we agree with you. Why aren't you talking about that more and more and more? But it's all part of the game. That game is very much related to this next episode I'm going to do, an upcoming Monday Minutes about how to get away with saying offensive things. And one of the ways to do that is to not be a toneless caricature where you just hammer the same point over and over and over and over and over again. And I don't want the show to turn into that. So hopefully that clears it up. Continue to have great guests that I agree with and disagree with, and continue to put out some great episodes that hopefully you'll enjoy. Yes, it's going to drive you crazy sometimes, but that's the name of the game. All right, listeners, you know the routine. This show is all about learning, making wise investments, and protecting and growing your capital. So if you're interested in these topics, make sure to hit the subscribe button. Of course, if you've already enjoyed a couple of great episodes, don't be shy, leave a review. It really helps the show's visibility. And lastly, if you're an accredited investor and you're interested in learning more about our investment opportunities, the types of deals that I personally invest in, go to asymcapital.com. That's ASYMcapital.com. Thanks a lot.